we don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Hello and welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Capitol Hill correspondent Nancy Cordes. Well, it was a bizarre interview, to say the least, for former Congressman Eric Massa, who acknowledged that he did, in fact, grope male staffers, but insisted it was just a tickle fight. Glenn Beck wasn't tickled, and it seems as though Massa's dalliance with the right has come to an abrupt end. The question now is, what's next for Massa, and what does he face from the Ethics Committee on Capitol Hill? Well, joining me to talk about those issues are Politico's Capitol Bureau Chief John Bresnahan and Washington Post National Investigative Correspondent Carol Leonnig. Thank you both so much for joining us. And Carol, I want to start with you and some of your reporting from this morning, because Congressman Massa, now former Congressman Massa, has given so many explanations. He said he did grope someone. He said he didn't grope someone. But according to your reporting, rumors had begun to circulate in the office that the married New York Democrat, as you write, had sexually propositioned young male staffers and interns. What more can you tell us?
Well, contrary to then Congressman Massa's claims that this was all about a Navy man's salty language, we found yesterday morning a lot of people telling us, very reliable sources, that this was very physical, that the allegations were that he had groped and tried to fondle more than one of his junior staffers, that some of his salty language included sexual propositions, or something you and I would consider a proposition for a sexual act, and that it also fell upon people that were as young as interns, so at least one intern. And so this also, according to the allegations that have been relayed to the House Ethics Committee, dates back almost from the day that Congressman Massa took office. This is not something that happened sort of late in his term. This kind of behavior, again, according to the allegations, began very soon after he arrived in Washington.
And John, you reported in Politico that he was living in this house for a while with a number of other staffers. Are there any indications of where these misdeeds, if they're true, may have taken place? Was it in the house? Was it in the office? Where did this all happen?
Well, it's difficult to kind of sort that out at the moment. We had heard an allegation that one incident took place between Mr. Massa and a staffer on a fundraising trip. I've never heard anything involving where he was living. Even Mr. Massa said yesterday that, I believe he said it on CNN, that at one point his chief of staff objected to him living in the house, and he moved into his congressional offices. But as we reported and the Post reported, I mean, this has been going on for a while. It was much more serious than what Massa has said about, just salty language or some tickle fight at his birthday party, his 50th birthday party. There were some serious allegations here that have gone to the Ethics Committee, and the question of what happens next, though, is up in the air.
So, Carol, where do things go from here? Because we know that the House Ethics Committee has opened an investigation, but we also know that the Ethics Committee on Capitol Hill is all too happy to end these investigations when members of Congress leave office. That's what we saw with Representative Mark Foley. Is there any indication that they'll continue to look into this, or now that Representative Massa has stepped down, are they going to basically try to wash their hands of all of this?
I think that it could go either way at this point. The investigation is still open. There are going to be some high-level meetings to discuss where to go forward very soon. And our sources are telling us that they believe that there is precedent in the Foley matter. Remember, this is the former member who departed, drove off in his truck when it was alleged that he had been propositioning and sending kind of creepy emails to former male pages. There is precedent in that case, according to sources, because the Ethics Committee did look into whether or not House leaders had handled the allegations properly. In other words, is there somebody in the House leadership that is making sure the staff is protected? And that may still be a very open question for the Ethics Committee or for the leadership.
John, one of the really strange things about this entire situation is that while Representative Massa said, yes, I did inappropriate things, yes, I groped a male staffer and it's time for me to go, he's also at the same time arguing that he's somehow being forced out by the Democratic establishment and that this is somehow punishment for him voting no on the health care bill. And some conservatives really jumped on this, and they were hoping that he was going to kind of blow the whistle on the Democratic Party. But those hopes seem to have come up a bit short. And his interview with Glenn Beck really kind of descended into absurdity last night. So does this mean that their hopes are really dashed in terms of him being somehow a spokesman for where the Democratic Party is going wrong?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I've never seen anything like the Glenn Beck interview. It was bizarre. It was ranting. I mean, we were working on this story about the allegations against Mr. Massa prior to his resignation announcement, and we'd actually contacted his office about the allegations, and then he came out with the retirement announcement, and then we quickly, went up with a story that it was, there's more to it than just, what he was saying about health care. Mm-hmm. He's put up a number of different versions of events. I think Republicans or conservatives, anybody who wants to use him as a political tool against Democrats, I think they have to be pretty careful. I mean, he seems to be he seems to have, different versions of events, and every time you keep pushing him, or he's been pushed during interviews, he comes up with a new version. So I think there's going to be more with this. I agree with my colleague that, the Ethics Committee could continue to look at this. They no longer have jurisdiction over Mr. Massa, of course, because he's left Congress. They no longer have jurisdiction over the original complainant, who was one of Massa's staffers. But there are still folks who are involved in this incident in Congress. The Republicans will push to find out if Democrats knew anything or should have known anything. And if they did know something, if the leadership knew something, what did they do with that information? So I don't think this is going away yet by any stretch.
Right. And Carol, as you reported this morning, even Speaker Pelosi is going to lengths to distance herself from Massa, saying this is a very sick person and perhaps his judgment is impaired because of the ethical issues that have arisen and he is no longer in the Congress. Does that seem to be the most logical explanation for these sort of careening stories and, and some of the paranoia that seems to exist here, which John touched on, which is that basically the former congressman said last night on Glenn Beck that it's very suspicious that Politico would release an article about him only 15 minutes after he decided to resign.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague John that if I was a conservative, and I think most conservatives are doing this, they're distancing themselves like crazy from someone who can't keep their story straight even in the same night. Now, I'm sure that the former congressman's under a lot of pressure, but to say you groped somebody on Glenn Beck at 4 o'clock and to say on Larry King Live later that evening that you didn't grope anybody, you really need to be thinking a little bit harder about sort of the veracity of your statements. And by the way, I'd add that I saw Michelle Malkin, a conservative blogger, reported today almost like a warning to conservatives, stay away from Massa was her line. She says she thinks that this is danger to play ball with somebody who can't really assert one thing consistently within the same 24 hours.
Right. I think even Rush Limbaugh is saying that. John, one last question. If this ethics investigation does kind of go away, where does this go from here? Is there any potential criminal investigation, any kind of lawsuit that would happen unless a staffer themselves or a former staffer actually went ahead and sued the former congressman?
It's a very interesting question. I've not heard any information on a potential criminal charges or law enforcement looking at it. Of course, we're looking at that, but I've not heard that it's risen to that level. Mm-hmm. Now, whether a staffer, a current or former staffer, could bring a lawsuit against Massa is interesting. He does have some constitutional privileges as a former member of Congress on what exactly he has to divulge about legislative issues on a personal nature. There's something called the Congressional Accountability Act, which a staffer could have brought an action against him. Of course, he's no longer on that. So we're kind of in a gray area here. I don't think we've seen anything like this in terms of the exact same circumstances. When Foley left Congress, of course, when Congressman Mark Foley in 2006, he came under investigation by Florida law enforcement and the FBI, but those were serious criminal allegations, and of course he was never charged. But in this case, I don't know if there's going to be any kind of criminal or legal action against Massa.
Right, because obviously we don't know if there's an underage component here like there was in that case. All right, well, Carol Leonnig of the Washington Post, John Bresnahan of Politico, thank you so much for helping to dissect this very strange chapter in Washington politics. We appreciate both of you being on Washington Unplugged today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
From Massa's mess to a star-studded event for a good cause, the American Association of People with Disabilities, AAPD, is holding their leadership gala honoring Stevie Wonder with their first Image Award. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer is also set to receive an award. And Betsy Johnson, whose trademark fashion and personal style have made her a household name, will also be in attendance. And she designed the look for tonight's event. And the fabulous Betsy Johnson joins me now. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a thrill.
It is. It was a quick wake-up thrill for me too. I'm so happy to.
Well, we're really glad you're here. Now, tell me a little bit about the organization and also what they enlisted you to do for them.
It all came up through my dearest fashion business friend for 100 zillion years, Mary Lou Luther, who is the most loved, respected fashion writer in the business anyway. So we go way back, and one of her sons, Walter in New York, is the CNN photographer. Her other son, Andy, is the CEO of this AAPD. And Mary Lou says, well, Andy would love you to be involved in his disability kind of charity thing. I said, anything for you, Mary Lou. Well, now I just feel part of the whole Mary Lou family, and Andy is unbelievably wonderful, great, inspiring, and all his people, and it's just been the most heartwarming.
He said to you, we want you to do a logo for us, right? For this special event?
It's been so fun. Well, right off the bat, he said, we want to be pink.
Well, that's your specialty.
Yep.
No wonder
he said, we know through you, pink is sexy.
And now we can see it on the screen, and it is indeed pink.
Yeah, and the whole night, and all last night was very, very, very pink.
You doodled, basically, to come up with this, right?
I just doodly-dooed around there, and we're dressing a lot of the women, and it's, I wish I could sign up and help every day with them.
Empowering words, right?
Yep.
Was that your goal?
Yes, they told me what to write, and I just scribbled around, but tonight is going to be very, very pink, and it's just been so heartwarming to see, to have my clothes on, people in wheelchairs, people with, just all kinds of needing physical support, that they're in my dresses and they're so happy. It's like their lives have flipped, sitting in a pink tutu dress.
And what's that like? Because you're obviously used to dressing statuesque models, and these are real people. And what made it so special for you to be able to dress people who are disabled?
Just to see what a pink dress can mean to a woman, any woman, but a disabled woman, that's extra special and thrilling, because they shouldn't be separated. They shouldn't be separated. And
everybody likes to feel pretty.
Yeah, and the disabilities do not have to separate them in any way, especially in being pink and pretty and feeling sexy and alive and beautiful. So am so honored to be a part of the pinkness.
Now, Washington can sometimes be a pretty serious place. We don't often see a lot of pink around here. So do you feel like, you're sort of bringing the pink to the nation's capital?
Yeah, I feel good. Pink is a psychologically very uplifting.
We're getting better
color
here than we used to be.
On the train, on that Acela, I'm like, I wore
lot
my
of navy blue
I
power
just
suits.
was like Miss Color and in a sea of black, which is, you know, I do costumes, I do clothes, I do kind of upness, and you do the world, you do all the stuff that makes everything happen.
So you didn't see anybody else with sparkly blue knickers on the train besides? Can we get a shot of these? Here, you stand up and show us the whole
But I'm
thing.
convinced you go home and dress head to toe in pink.
Well, you know, I will
And
say it's tough.
sequins.
It's tough at 8 months pregnant to try to find to find the pink sparkly outfits. I will say you should start a maternity line.
Well, you know that the baby doll and the trapeze
that's
have
true.
been an accepted, loved fashion shape for years. So I don't think women now, pregnant women, have to look separately. They can go to lots of stores and find that.
Yeah, you can actually
that
do a
bigger
lot
shape.
more shopping now just in the regular
Yeah.
clothing section. There's tunics, there's great stuff. So tell us I can't let you go without telling us what's hot for spring. Not that I'll be able to fit into it, but you know.
Oh no!
But
you
what's
should-
big for
This
spring?
is the best time, the most beautiful time of your life when
Oh,
you're
I thank you.
pregnant. I have 2 grandchildren, so I kind of been there. And
Yeah. What are you doing
I
for
don't
spring?
know. You know, just everything. I like to do something for everybody, but I do feel that what you put on should make you feel better, make you feel good, comfortable, be uplifting, especially with our pocketbooks.
Yep.
We want to choose carefully, and
Right.
I hope with clothing you choose, you know, what makes you feel good as well as what gets the job done.
Sure.
And maybe they're 2 separate things. Maybe one is black and one is pink. But yeah, I think after this long kind of cloudy, dark year, wearing color and some ruffles and playing with your clothes and your makeup and your hair and your lip can be a real fun spot.
People want to
in
feel
a
uplifted.
slightly still rough time.
Right. Well, you're a real inspiration. Thank
Well,
you for
thank you,
bringing the pink to
Nancy.
Washington. We can't wait to see the outfits, and
Thanks.
love the
Thank
logo.
you. Oh, thanks.
It's
and
really
I love,
fun.
I'm going to see Stevie Wonder again.
Yes, that's
and
right.
Say hi. And I just love this organization.
Well, it's great. It's a great cause.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming in to talk about
Thank
it.
you, Nat.
The one and
Thank
only
you.
Betsy Johnson.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Happy second baby.
Oh, thank you. And finally, we're going to move across the pond where our Kaylee Hartung is in London at the Alliance for Youth Movement Summit, which with some of the brightest young leaders and activists of tomorrow who are using new media to try to promote nonviolent change. Take a listen.
Young activists from around the world have gathered in London this week. They're learning how to use connection technologies that we use every day, like Facebook and Twitter, to create social movements. Janessa Goldbeck is one of them. Through the Alliance for Youth Movements, she connected her organization, Genocide Intervention Network, with Witness, a company that uses video to create social change.
We actually used their staff who are know how to train people in video advocacy to train our activists who are based here in the U.S. to go and film influentials in their community talking about why genocide prevention was so important. And then they took those videos to Capitol Hill, activists from high school age, middle school, college students, community activists took those videos to Capitol Hill, showed them to the members of Congress, and then it wasn't just them in their offices, it was all of these influential people, mayors, elected officials, religious leaders, things like that. So really using video to get that message across.
Janessa is just one example of how young people are crossing cultural and geographic borders, online and offline, to create change. I'll be back here tomorrow with more from the 2010 Alliance for Youth Movement Summit. From London, I'm Kaylee Hartung for CBSNews.com.
And that's it for Washington Unplugged. Join us again tomorrow on CBSNews.com. And don't forget to tune into the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric. In Washington, I'm congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes. Have a great day.
We don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.